Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this workshop that focuses on updating your devices. And we're so excited to have you join us to discuss this important topic. I'm Yael Grauer, and I've been in Consumer Reports for about 2 years working on Security Planner. And we're here today with Gary Belvin, who's a CISO at Hudson Trading Company, to discuss updating your devices. Okay, if we can get, this is Gary, who's lived in a lot of different locations, just like everybody in the chat. And we're going to discuss updating your devices. And if we could get to the next slide, we're going to dig into a lot of things today, and I wanted to go over the agenda. So we're going to start with a quick introduction and review a little bit of housekeeping. And then we'll be looking at ways to update your phone, whether you're on an Android phone or an iPhone. And then after that, we'll look at ways to update your laptop and desktop computers. And we're going to leave some time in the end for questions. And a little bit of housekeeping to get started. This is meant to be an easy to follow webinar showing you how to update the most popular devices that you have. It's going to be an overview, so we can't possibly get to every aspect of updating every device in an hour. And even if you're following along, you might not have time to update every single device you use, but we want you to walk away knowing what your next steps are. And at times there might be acronyms that don't make sense. So if that happens, please let us know in the comments. We want to make this as inclusive as possible. And I want to let you know we are recording this for people who can't join us. So we'll share this. So please don't share anything too private or personal in the chat. And we are going to be following up with links and recordings in case you have to walk away or want to share this with a friend. There is closed captioning happening due to requests and accessibility needs, so you can enable that at the bottom of your screen. And we're so excited to have you here, and we want to provide opportunities to engage. And some ways you can do that are through the Q&A in the chat, which a lot of you are chiming in already. So thank you for that. And of course, we'll be talking a little bit about Security Planner, which you can check out if you haven't already. And then as with all Consumer Reports events, we're going to be creating a safe space for this important conversation that affects a lot of people. So we just ask you to follow the guidelines on these slides and just assume best intentions of the participants, volunteers, speakers, and staff. Be mindful and understanding of people who may have come from different experiences, and you can speak to your own perspectives and stories. And then, of course, just refrain from personal attacks or comments on people's appearances or voices. We're going to focus on the topics under discussion. And so by attending this webinar, you're agreeing to these rules. If you don't adhere to them, we do have permission to remove you from the discussion. And just a quick hello to the people now joining. I see people streaming in. And we're thrilled to have Gary Belvin with us here today. And we've also got Amira and CJ supporting in the background. And we're here today because it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And one free and easy way to protect yourself is to update your software, because updates include bug fixes that protect your phone, tablet, laptop, or desktop computer from known security risks. And when people find potential areas for risks or other issues, like the companies themselves, they put out patches so that the products aren't vulnerable. And they'll release those in the updates. So if you don't update, you're vulnerable to potential threats, which leave your information or data open to these attacks. So I wanted to do a quick poll on how often you update your phone. Do you put off updates until a convenient time? Do you never update your phone? Do you update as soon as you get a notice? Do you have your phone set up to update automatically? And then some people, sometimes updates are available even before the push updates are sent to everybody, and you can even check them manually. Like as soon as you find out that there's an update, you can do that. And it's kind of easy to put off updates because it's time consuming. But if you do get a notification that an update's available, you want to update as soon as you can. And you can even check your products and apps every few months to see if there's any available updates. So okay, so these are coming in. You see that most people update as soon as they get a notice, which is really, really great. And I'm going to turn this over to Gary, who's going to talk about how often other people update their phone.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing how often you update your phone. On the next slide, thought you might be fun to discuss how often other people update their phone. And so from this graph, we can tell that at least 80% of people update their products within approximately 30 days. Now it looks like most of you are fairly excited about updating your devices, and that's really good. On the next slide, we'll cover why it isn't important to update your devices relatively quickly. On the next slide, we have a graph of how often people are hacking devices. And what we see from this graph is really interesting trend. In 2021, there were over twice as many hacks as there were in 2020. So hacking is really becoming a big issue, and it's become an even bigger issue in the very recent past.
So question, how likely do you think people are going to get exploited specifically? Like, are people in this webinar going to get hacked if they don't update?
So it's probably unlikely that you yourself will get hacked. But that can change depending on what kind of job you're in and how public a figure you are. So if you're on a lot of mailing lists, if you're the kind of person that gets a lot of spam anyways, or even just being on LinkedIn can be enough to direct attacks towards you. Just a quick example of that, we see that all new employees get phishing and malware sent to them as soon as they announce on LinkedIn that they have a new job. So you may not think that you might be particularly targeted, but even kind of innocuous things can kind of direct attacks your way. On the next slide, you might ask, well, how fast do we need to update? Previously, we said, what do other people do? People update within approximately 30 days. This is a really interesting graph showing how quickly hackers attack after an update is released. So as Yale mentioned earlier in the talk, updates are released in order to fix problems. Well, it turns out that hackers can look at those updates and figure out what the problem is that they're trying to fix. And as soon as they know what the problem is, they can construct an attack for everyone that has not installed the update. And so what you see here is that hackers respond very quickly to updates when they are released. So the majority of hacking happens within the first week that an update gets released. And then approximately, 20% the week after that, and, maybe 10% the week after that into a little bit of a tail. So it's quite important to install updates as soon as they're available.
So for those of us who maybe we want to update as soon as it's available, or make sure that if there's an update available, we update it at a time that's convenient to us, are there any tools you can use if you don't want to wait for an update to get pushed, or to keep checking to see if there's one available?
Yeah, so on iPhone, there is an interesting cool tool called iVerify that will let you know as soon as an update is available. And sometimes that can be as much as a week before that update will get, that you would otherwise be notified. So that's a good way of checking to make sure that you're up to date. It also turns out that tool will also tell you if you've been hacked, which is useful to know if you are worried about that.
Sorry, just to interject a little bit, because I saw a question in the comment asking what hacking is, and the way that we're defining it is somebody who gets unauthorized access to your data, either in your phone or on your computer. So I just wanted to define that quickly. Okay, so there's iVerify. Is there anything for your desktop?
For Mac OS, there's a product called Pareto Security, which will automatically check many of the applications on your computer and tell you when they need updating. There are similar products on Windows and Android, but because I'm a Mac user, I'm less familiar with those.
Cool.
So we're going to move on to the mechanics of exactly how to update. If you go to the next slide. So on iPhone, you just go into settings and click on general and then software update. Sometimes you might have to wait in the screen for a second to as it dynamically checks. And then you want to hit install now. You probably want to make sure that you have power and Wi-Fi available when you're doing an update. Next slide. To enable, we recommend turning on automatic updates as well. And you can turn that on using this setting on that same screen. This covers both downloading the update when it's available and then installing that update. Typically happens overnight if you leave your phone plugged in. Am I missing anything? That's all. Sometimes updates do take some space on your phone. If you've maybe taken a lot of photos, you might need to clear some of those out in order to create space. The other thing that might happen if you have trouble downloading the update on your phone, if you can update by plugging your phone into your computer. And if you have a MacBook, that will present you an option to download the update on the Mac and push it to your phone.
Okay, so before we get to Android phones, just really quickly, some of the questions. Somebody asked us how to spell the names of the apps that we mentioned. And the one for iOS is iVerify, which is I-V-E-R-I-F-Y. It is a paid app. And then for your macOS computer, it's called Pareto, P-A-R-E-T-O. And then there was also a question about like, is it okay to just update when your phone pushes that? Like, is that quick enough? And I think it probably is for most people, but for me, like that always happens at an inconvenient time. So I actually use the iVerify app myself because I would prefer to update it at night so that maybe before that push is sent out. And then if you're in a high risk situation, then you might want to update right away. And so that's just some questions for that. And then we're going to also talk about how to update your Android phone. We don't want to leave Android users behind. So just like with iPhones, you'll want to update to the latest version for security updates and bug fixes, as well as new features. And then this is how to do that. You want to open your settings app by tapping settings, and then system, and then advanced and system update to see your update status. So if it's empty, you don't have to worry about updating, but if there is an update available, you can just follow the steps on the screen. And Google releases updates for security reasons and to introduce new features. Those should already download automatically, but you might want to check for updates on your own if your device has been offline for a while. And the way to do that is to go to settings, security updates. And you can also update the apps on your phone too. And you do that by going to settings, security, Google Play, system update to see if there's any updates through the Google Play store that are available. And then, yes, we recommend setting your apps to update automatically. And you can go to the Google Play Store and it's under Profile, Settings, Network Preferences, and Auto Update Apps. And you can see them to update. Actually, I think that is on the next slide. You can set them to update on any network using Wi-Fi or mobile data, or you can update when connected to Wi-Fi. So you're updating your operating system on your phone and then also setting your apps to update automatically. And then in the next slide, we're going to be talking about troubleshooting. There might be times when you have to make space for an update by manually deleting something from your phone. And Android support has tips and directions on how to do that. And if any of you have phones that fill up a lot, you've probably already gone through this process. The first thing you want to do is see if there's any photos you can remove or any movies, music, or media. And you can also remove apps and data from apps you're no longer using, or you can delete files you already have saved elsewhere and move them off your phone. And the other troubleshooting thing that might happen is if an update starts downloading but doesn't finish, your device will send you a notification when it automatically tries to download again. So go ahead and open that notification and tap the update button if that happens. And then in the next slide, we have another poll. I am wondering how full your phone is, because I'm curious, like how many people might face this issue. So does your phone, do you always have to delete things? Do you often have to delete things? Does your phone sometimes get full, or does your phone never get full? This is a little unrelated, but you can actually delete old emails if you don't want to pay for storage. And we actually have a story on how to delete emails from your inbox that we're going to throw in the comments. But I'll give you another minute or so to respond. Oh, I see a question saying, how do you update apps automatically on iOS? I believe iOS does that already. I think it
does. However, both Google and iPhone update apps automatically, but just like with operating system updates, sometimes they can take a while on their own. And so if you'd like to update them yourself, to keep them everything up to date, go to the App Store. It's a little bit tricky to find. Go to the App Store and then click on your profile image, and that will show you the apps that are on your phone. And there's a button there to click Update All.
Okay, so I'm starting to see the responses, and it looks like most people are not like me. My phone is always filling up. We have the majority of people, their phone never gets full. So that is kind of interesting. But we're going to move on to updating your your operating system on your laptop or desktop computer. And again, there's many types of malware that work by taking advantage of out-of-date software. So Gary's going to talk about how to update your Mac.
Yeah. So on your MacBook, you can check manually whether your system is up to date by opening System Preferences and then looking at Software Update, and it will tell you whether you're up to date. If you click on that Advanced button, that will, I guess before you do that, you also want to make sure that your Mac is going to stay automatically up to date by clicking on that check mark right there. Under that Advanced button, you can just want to make sure that you're automatically getting all the different kinds of updates that are available. This covers automatically checking for new updates, downloading the updates when they're available, installing the updates at a convenient time, in addition to App Store updates. And then the last one is actually the most important one. That's specific updates to block active malware. Next slide.
Okay, so yeah,
I don't think that poll has been set up.
Yeah, I think we were going to talk about updating your Windows operating system next. And before we do that poll. Yes, okay, so updating your Windows operating system. So luckily, Windows should automatically download and install most important security updates for your PC. To check for software updates manually, go to Start, Settings, Update, and Security Windows Update. And you'll click Check for Updates. And again, if there isn't one, it'll let you know. If there is one available, then it'll give you instructions on the screen. And you can also update your apps on your Windows machine automatically. So again, you'll hit Start Screen and then pick Microsoft Store. And then you'll select the account menu with just 3 dots and click on Settings, App Updates, and set Update Apps Automatically to On. And I think all this is really important because I feel like usually when you get an update, there's a tendency to kind of blow it off because you're working on something else. And our
There's one other kind of update that I would encourage people to pay attention to, and that's updating your browsers. We don't have a slide for it, but if you use either Chrome or Firefox, they will update automatically, but they do need to be restarted in order for that update to take effect. So if you see a red or yellow or green icon next to your profile picture in Chrome, that means there's an update that's waiting for you to restart Chrome, that's waiting to be applied. Restarting Chrome is quite easy. If you close it and then bring it back, it will restore all of the tabs that you have open. So don't be afraid to update, even if you're in the middle of work.
right. Yeah, that's always great that it just will do that for you. So the next slide, I'm just curious how many total devices people have in their household, and we're going to ask you to submit the answers in the chat. So for the purpose of this question, we're only including phones, tablets, laptops, and desktop computers for everybody in your household. So I'm curious how many total devices people have. And I think mine is, I probably have too many. I have a habit of compiling Chromebooks.
Do you have any devices that you haven't opened in a while and maybe are waiting for a lot of updates?
Right. Oh my gosh, we have 8, 11.
It's a lot of devices to keep up to date.
Yeah. Oh, we have a.
There we go.
Okay, now we have an actual poll too, which is great. Yeah, so I'm curious if you could type in the chat whether you're updating these devices regularly. So I think that's kind of the hard part about this, is that it's easy to remember to update devices that you're using all the time. But if you're only using them every once in a while, you definitely want to go through these steps with the ones you don't have, because you're only as good as your weakest link. So you want to update all of your devices.
Yeah, or one other recommendation, if you have a device you haven't used for a while, when you turn it on, kind of wait for the updates to apply before going off and doing a lot of other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We had a question in the comments about what does cache mean, and is it okay to clear your cache? Did you want to take that one?
Yeah. Your computer, as you go about your day, saves little bits of the internet in order to make your computer run faster. But sometimes all of those little saved bits and bobs can take up space, and potentially sometimes they can get the computer can get confused if they're maybe old. And so clearing your cache is a good way to start everything afresh, and it also improves your privacy as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. We had a question. Somebody said they don't have the system or security option under their Android phone. Where else could it be? Huh. So the thing about Android phones, unlike iOS, is that they're all different. Like there's slight variations of it depending on what phone you have, as opposed to iPhones, which are pretty much all the same. I'm trying to think of the way to check that in the chat.
Yeah. There's one other question about how to clear the cache. Typically, the cache is a browser feature, so you can clear the cache by restarting your browser. Your operating system does have kind of more technical cache, but a good way to clear the cache there is just to restart your computer.
As far, I don't know, for the Android phone, like going back to that question, there should be a settings app, and there should be a system update. And I'm looking at the Google, yeah, like I'm looking at the Android help page and it does mention that. Somebody also asked, is there a way to delete parts of text conversations like photos from all of your devices at one time rather than having to go into each device separately? I know there's a new feature actually on iPhones that will delete duplicate photos, which is a really cool new feature with the new operating system. And there's also when you upload your photos, oftentimes there will be an option that'll say like delete them off your phone as you upload them. So I think that's one way to do that. But as far as trying to decide whether to go into each device separately, like it depends on how you're storing it. Like if you're storing it in the cloud, then like if you're storing it on your actual phone and there's different images on different phones, then yeah, you have to actually, if it's actually being stored on your phone, then you'll need to go into each phone. And then people are asking if you need to update Safari. Yeah, definitely you want to keep your browsers up to date.
Safari gets updated the same way the Mac OS operating system gets updated. So the updates for that will appear under System Preferences Software Update.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just in general, if your browser tells you to update it, then you should do that. Just as a rule of thumb, if you're using an app, a tool, a browser, a device that asks you to update it, it's a good idea to update it. Some of them will do that automatically, but a lot of them require you to do something to be able to do that. Okay, so the delete, somebody's asking about the delete duplicate photos option. I'm trying to remember how that, I think that like, it's like if you go to albums, there's a section called utilities and you can select duplicates and there's an option to, I think it's called merge, and you hit merge and it deletes duplicate photos.
That's absolutely correct. Just double checked.
I just did that. I was so excited. I didn't realize that I had all these duplicate photos. And as a person who, unlike most of the people here, my phone is constantly filling up. Like I'm always trying to upload stuff off my phone. So let's see. Someone asked if you can clear the cache by clearing the history.
Oftentimes the cache and the history are combined. So many times if you are clearing the history, it will also clear the cache.
Yeah, that's how I understand it. Okay, let's see. Somebody's saying system updates is not updating their apps and they're no longer getting system update. Yeah, so that's the thing, unfortunately, with phones is that if you do have a phone that is too old, it will no longer get certain updates.
It's also the case, Google implemented a rule maybe 2 or 3 years ago that required Android phone manufacturers to continue to deliver updates for a period of time. If you have a phone that's older than 3 years old, it would maybe not be covered by that policy. So unfortunately, purchasing a modern phone should be one of the options that people think about.
Right. Okay, somebody asked about if there's a failed update on iPhone. So I know that if you're, like, again, we talk about if your device doesn't support the latest release, then that might be an issue. There's also the not enough space issue. And so you might need to remove space. You can remove, it'll try to remove app data that it can re-download that doesn't actually remove or relocate your data. But if it still doesn't have enough space, you can use your computer to update your device. If you can't connect your device to a computer for whatever reason, you have to remove things. You have to go to settings, general, and then the name of your device and storage. Sometimes it takes a long time. You do need an internet connection to update your device, and the time it takes to download depends on like how fast your internet is and how big the update is. But you should still be able to use your phone while it's updating. You might see it, a message saying unable to install update or unable to check for update. And Apple says to try doing it again on the same network. Like it'll usually say like there was an error or it requires a network connection. So if it requires a network connection, then you'll want to make sure that you are connected to a network. And then you can also try updating your device using another network or using a different computer. And then if that still happens with multiple networks, you can try to remove the update and then start over again. If it doesn't complete, which is very annoying, like the progress bar starts to move really slowly, that's annoying. But you'll like the best thing to do, I think, is to make sure you're connected to a power source and just give it time to update. But if it just doesn't work, you can download the update again. And so you go to settings, general, storage, find the update in the list of apps, tap it, delete the update, and then go to settings, general, software update, and download the latest update again. So those are some troubleshooting options.
There's a question about if people are at risk if they are using a phone that is no longer receiving updates. And the answer to that is yes. For a long time, the most commonly used exploits were several years old. So if you have a phone that's no longer receiving updates or a computer that's no longer receiving updates, I would highly recommend getting a newer piece of hardware that supports updates. If that is a device that has any sort of sensitive information on it, or you care about the privacy of that device in any way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Somebody asked, how do you wipe your data? Yeah, so if you were going to donate a computer or a phone, and we actually have articles on how to do that, then you definitely want to, like, yeah, it's a good idea to wipe your data or delete the data.
Just want to like factory reset whatever device you're giving away.
Right. And I think we actually have an article about that I can post the link in the comments on how to wipe all your data of a computer. You'll want to make sure, like, I just got a new phone and I transferred all of my apps, and there was a few things that didn't transfer over because I was using some. And so just make sure that you have it all updated before you wipe it, because once you factory reset it, you cannot get that information back unless you've backed it up somewhere. But yeah, how you update depends. So make sure you back up all your important files, and then sometimes you'll need serial numbers or usernames and passwords. So make sure if you have passwords stored in your browser to make sure to save that. And then the way to do it really depends on what computer you have. So I know, like in Windows 10, you go to the start menu and click on settings, and then there's an update and security area, and there's a recovery menu, and you click reset this PC to get started. And then on Apple, if it's an Intel-based Mac, you do Shift Option Command and R. There's a utilities window that pops up, and you'll want to reinstall the original system. It's a little different for MI-based Macs, sorry. And there's different settings that you can do for that. And then Chromebooks is actually the easiest if you have a Chromebook, because it's already stored mostly in Google Drive. So there's not a lot to back up before you start. You just click launcher, open the settings, go to advanced, and there's a power wash button in the reset settings, and hit reset, and that'll flush away all of your personal information.
There's some questions about the costs of new phones and how that could be prohibitive. Unfortunately, phones do cost a lot these days. But a recommendation I would have for that is to purchase a phone that's maybe 1 or 2 years old, as phones within the last 2 years approximately continue to receive updates, and they can a used phone could be a lot more cost effective. There's also a question about whether using a VPN will protect you from viruses on the internet.
Oh, let me just hop in really quickly. I wanted to talk about the phone thing. Is that, like, sometimes you can buy a refurbished phone, and we have an article on how to make sure you're protected when you do that. But that's a way to save money, is if you get a pre-owned phone or laptop. and like you can actually get them directly from the companies for some of the companies, and you just have to make sure to know what to look for. So we will post some links about that. But yes, VPNs. We've actually done a lot of reporting on VPNs, and we have an article on who we recommend VPNs for. We don't recommend it for everybody. And then if you are going to use one, there's a lot of sort of potentially misleading advertising and information that makes you think that a VPN will protect you in ways that either it isn't able to protect you, or that you're already getting those benefits from things like HTTPS. So it's, yeah.
In particular, the VPNs will not protect you from viruses. And the primary reason we want to update our computers is to protect you from viruses. So the VPN is providing a different kind of protection that will not protect from viruses. The same thing goes for questions about DuckDuckGo and various other search engines. Those search engines, just like the VPN, provide a level of privacy, but they are not going to protect you from viruses on the internet. So it is still important to update your computer.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is interesting in VPNs in particular, is that a lot of people think that it's going to protect you from things that you can get protection from just by updating your software, using a strong password, using multi-factor authentication, which we're going to have webinars on in the coming weeks. And so, yeah, so a lot of times you would be better off, but not just following, like you have to really think about what is it that you want a VPN to protect you from, and is it the best way to protect you from that?
We should talk about the Security Planner, which is
yes.
a wonderful tool that Security Planner is run by Consumer Reports. And it's a site where you can enter the kinds of things that you are worried about, and it will produce a set of recommendations. So a good example here is if you're worried about privacy, VPN and DuckDuckGo are good solutions to privacy. But if you're worried about getting hacked, updating your computer is the best thing you can do.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, definitely go to securityplanner.org if you haven't already. You can make a security plan. We also have some pages in Security Planner on the things we've covered today, on like how to update your PC, how to update your Mac, how to update your phones. And so you can go to those pages to figure out how to do that. We're also going to drop some other references in the chat that Gary had mentioned. We're going to talk, somebody asked where you could find the charts, and they're in these links that we're going to drop about, especially if you kind of want to nerd out and dig deeper into like, what are the exploits used, and how quickly are people updating, and how are people taking advantage of people that aren't. And then we're also going to link to some of the tools that we recommended, iVerify and Pareto, which actually I think is really good if you are a small business owner.
Yeah. There's a lot of research there's a lot of very advanced research that goes into answering a lot of these questions. But at the end of the day, even experts sometimes fail to do the very simple things like updating their computer. And so that's the message we want to get across. There's a lot of interesting science behind this, but at the end of the day, the answer is just update.
We had a question here that I'm going to answer on how often you should get a new phone. And I think like a lot of that is kind of personal. Like some people like to get new phones all the time. But I would say you should probably get a new phone if it's no longer accepting updates. Like if your phone is so old that you can no longer install security updates because it doesn't support them, then that's when you should probably get a new phone if you can afford one.
Yeah, there may be other reasons to get a new phone, but from a security perspective, the only thing that matters is whether it's getting updates.
Yeah. It's for me, I always get one when the cost of fixing the old one is like I might as well just get a new one. But I'm kind of hard on my phones. Okay, so there's a question here. I noticed when I'm sent photos that I want to keep in my photos, I put them there, but they also show up in downloads. If I delete them in downloads, will they remain in photos? That is a good question.
This is a question about iPhotos, maybe?
I'm not sure. I know that when I download, like I might download an item on my computer and it's saved in the downloads folder, but if I save it again, it's also saved like on desktop. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I think I would recommend double checking if there's another copy.
Right.
The other thing you can do is you can try deleting it, and if that's the only one, you can restore it out of trash.
Right. Okay, let's see if we have any more questions.
Bunch of questions about antivirus software. Microsoft comes with Microsoft Defender. MacBooks tends to not have antivirus. So I don't have anything to recommend there. Do you have any recommendations?
You know what? There's some features for like antivirus features that are built in in iOS so that they work similarly to Defenders, but you don't have to actually proactively turn it on. Whereas if you are on a Windows device, then you would need to proactively turn that on. And I actually have some notes on that I can look up really quickly because I was just telling somebody about it.
Yeah. In the past, having antivirus used to be really important, but as operating systems have become more advanced, they've started building in more of those protections. And so it's less important these days to run antivirus. If you think you may have been compromised, then running some kind of cleaning utility. I see Malwarebytes in the chat. And there's a number of other anti-spyware softwares that you can run to kind of clean your computer if you're worried about.
Right. There's also some we recommend specifically for people that are worried about stalkerware on their devices. Like if you're in a domestic violence situation, then in Security Planner, we do have a page on that where we specifically recommend ways to screen for that type of malware. Oh, but I did find my notes here. So basically Apple uses Gatekeeper X Protected MRT. It mentions it in a blog post, and those are basically like antivirus. Some of them have the same underlying technology, and I will throw a link in the comments.
That technology was one of the updates that we talked about earlier to make sure that automatic updates to that is turned on. That's basically the Mac OS's built-in antivirus.
Okay, let's see what other questions we have.
Question about Chrome OS. Chrome OS is one of the most secure operating systems, so it's quite protected.
Yeah, we have a page where we recommend using a modern browser, and it does mention Chrome OS, also Firefox, and Brave as options for browsers. Will a VPN make it more difficult for being found or seen by malicious actors? So I think one of the important things about VPNs is that they do protect your IP address. They protect it from it'll go through the VPN instead of going through your internet service provider. And so, and then to the endpoint, if it's working properly, it will protect your IP address, but there's lots of other ways that people can track you. And so as far as, are you still being tracked around the internet even if you use a VPN, the answer is yes. And then most people who use a VPN are also like still signed into their email. And so like, it depends on what information you're trying to protect from who, but I think a lot of people will think of VPN as a panacea that will make them invisible online. And that's just not true because there's so many different ways to be able to kind of track you and your information.
Yeah. I recommend using a VPN if you're in a public place, like a coffee shop. But typically, it sort of only is good for kind of protecting you from kind of a public network, or people kind of in the same building or as you are.
Right, and then we just recommend like making sure the VPN you use is a good one. And we looked at the privacy and security of different VPNs, and ones that we identified as scoring well on that were Molvad, iVPN, and Mozilla, which is a white labeled version of Molvad.
Should we, what do you think about the Samsung Internet Browser?
The Samsung Internet Browser. That I don't know much about that actually.
So many phones come with kind of built-in software from the phone manufacturer. And I recommend uninstalling those products and using a standard browser. Sometimes the browsers from sometimes non-standard browsers contain additional tracking that you may not want.
Okay. So we are going to, I send a follow-up email with all these slides and other information. We do have 3 more events lined up, and you can sign up on action.consumerreports.org/upcoming_webinars. And then if you could let us know what topics you want to see in future workshops, that would be great. We are doing 4 Cybersecurity 101 workshops this month, 3 in addition to this one. But there's also other webinars that Consumer Reports does. So we'd love to get your opinion on what topics we should join. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us and bringing all of your great questions.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.